On June 20, 1944, aboard the USS Enterprise in the Philippine Sea, Lieutenant Junior Grade Saburo Kitamura of the Imperial Japanese Navy stood in the enlisted mess hall, his hands shaking as he held a tray loaded with more food than his entire squadron had shared in 3 days: fried chicken, mashed potatoes swimming in butter, green beans, white bread, apple pie, and a glass of cold milk. The American sailor behind the serving line, irritated by the delay, gestured impatiently at the ice cream station. "You want chocolate or vanilla?" The question made no sense. Ice cream didn't exist on warships. Kitamura had been pulled from the Philippine Sea 4 hours earlier, one of 43 Japanese airmen recovered during the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. He expected execution or, at best, starvation and torture. Japanese propaganda had been explicit: Americans were barbarians who ate their prisoners, devils who delighted in suffering. Instead, medical corpsmen had treated his wounds, given him morphine for the pain, and now offered him ice cream flavors. The chocolate or vanilla question would haunt him for decades. It was the moment his understanding of the war, of America, of everything, began to crumble. Across the Pacific War, approximately 35,000 Japanese military personnel would experience American naval captivity and witness an abundance that shattered everything they believed about their enemy's weakness. They discovered carriers where enlisted sailors ate better than Japanese admirals, where machinery produced fresh water from seawater in unlimited quantities, and where ice cream machines operated continuously despite combat operations. These encounters with American naval logistics would demolish the spiritual foundations of Japanese military ideology more thoroughly than any defeat in battle. The mathematics of maritime abundance were calculated in calories and capabilities. While Japanese sailors subsisted on rice balls and pickled vegetables, American crews consumed 4,100 calories daily of varied, fresh foods. While Japanese carriers hand-pumped aviation fuel, American ships automated everything. While the Imperial Navy prayed to the gods for divine winds, the U.S. Navy manufactured its own weather with refrigeration, air conditioning, and ice cream at sea. The transformation began the moment Japanese survivors were pulled aboard American vessels. Commander Mitsuo Fukuda, the mastermind of Pearl Harbor who later became a Christian minister in America, documented his 1945 rescue experience aboard the USS Missouri. "They hauled me up like a caught fish, and I prepared for death. Instead, a medical officer examined my injuries while a sailor brought coffee. Real coffee, hot, with sugar and cream. I hadn't tasted coffee since 1942. The sailor apologized that they were out of donuts." This casual mention of depleted donut supplies, while Japanese forces were eating leather belts, revealed the gulf between propaganda and reality. The Imperial Japanese Navy's own reports, captured after the war, showed that by 1944, enlisted sailors received approximately 1,400 calories daily when supplies were available. Vitamin deficiency was endemic. Beriberi, scurvy, and night blindness plagued crews. American naval rations, by contrast, included fresh meat daily, frozen vegetables, fresh baked bread, dairy products, eggs for breakfast, and multiple beverage options. The Office of Naval Records shows that mess halls on large carriers in 1944 served approximately 15,000 meals daily, with menus rotating through dozens of options. Japanese prisoners, accustomed to unchanging rice rations, couldn't comprehend this variety at sea. The shock deepened when prisoners discovered the enlisted men's quarters. Petty Officer Kazuo Sakamaki, America's first Japanese POW, later wrote about his amazement at American submarine facilities. The enemy submarines had showers with hot water. The crews slept in bunks with mattresses and clean sheets. They had a library of books and magazines. The mess hall had a coffee urn that never emptied. They lived better underwater than we lived on land. The presence of ice cream machines on American warships delivered a particularly devastating psychological impact. The Japanese Navy considered ice cream impossible at sea, a luxury requiring resources no combat vessel could spare. Yet by 1943, the U.S. Navy operated floating ice cream factories. The USS Lexington's ice cream plant could produce 500 gallons a day. When the USS Lexington, CV-16, was torpedoed and listing, sailors evacuating to other ships reportedly rescued ice cream stocks before abandoning ship. Japanese prisoners watched American damage control parties, exhausted from fighting fires and flooding, receive ice cream sundaes as battle rations. The cognitive dissonance was overwhelming. Their nation, fighting for its existence, couldn't provide basic nutrition to its forces. The enemy, supposedly decadent and weak, gave ice cream to sailors during combat. Chief Petty Officer Yoshio Yamato, captured when his destroyer sank at Leyte Gulf, spent 3 days aboard the USS Iowa. His smuggled diary recorded, "The battleship's crew eats in shifts, but the food never stops." When I asked why they waste, the guard laughed and said, "It's not waste if you have unlimited supplies." The laundry facilities stunned Japanese prisoners. American carriers had industrial washing machines, dryers, and pressing equipment. Enlisted sailors received clean uniforms twice weekly. Fresh water, precious beyond measure on Japanese ships, flowed freely for showers, laundry, and cleaning. The evaporators on the USS Enterprise could produce 140,000 gallons of fresh water daily, more than the entire Japanese carrier force could produce combined. Recreation facilities seemed like impossible fiction: movie theaters, libraries, gyms, and hobby shops. The USS Enterprise's newspaper, published daily at sea, included sports scores and news from home. Japanese carriers had meditation spaces. American carriers had soda fountains serving milkshakes. Lieutenant Commander Takeshi Miura later testified, "Your enlisted sailors live better than our officers. They have radios, photographs of girlfriends, and packages from home with chocolate and cigarettes. They complain about food that would be a feast for Japanese admirals." One sailor threw away a candy bar because it had melted slightly. That candy bar represented more sugar than Japanese pilots saw in months. The medical facilities exposed another gulf. American sick bays treated enemies with the same advanced care as their own sailors, with X-ray machines, blood banks, and surgical equipment matching shore hospitals. Antibiotics, particularly penicillin, seemed like magic. Pharmacists Mate Second Class Robert Wagner recalled treating Japanese prisoners. "They couldn't believe we'd waste medicine on enemies." One pilot with a badly infected leg wound kept trying to refuse treatment, saying, "Save it for Americans." I had to show him our medical stores, lockers full of sulfa, penicillin, morphine, to convince him we had plenty. He started crying. The repair facilities demonstrated American industrial supremacy at sea. Japanese ships limped back to port for significant repairs. American vessels fixed themselves while underway. Floating dry docks and carrier machine shops could manufacture replacement parts and rebuild engines. Ensign Ruji Nagatsuka watched the USS Randolph's crew repair Kamikaze damage while still conducting flight operations. They fixed in hours what would have sunk Japanese carriers. The food production systems on American carriers defied Japanese comprehension. Bakeries produced 1,500 loaves of bread daily. Butcher shops processed whole beef carcasses in freezers larger than Japanese submarines. The galley on the USS Enterprise used more electricity than an entire Japanese destroyer. Supply ships revealed the final dimension of American abundance. American fast carrier groups received supplies weekly at sea from fleet oilers, ammunition ships, and store ships. Lieutenant Minoru Tanaka watched from the USS Hornet's brig. They transferred more supplies in 3 hours than our carriers received in 3 months. The fresh food included lettuce, tomatoes, and fruit. Real fruit. We were fighting for the emperor with empty stomachs while Americans ate salads at sea. The mail system particularly amazed prisoners. American sailors received mail weekly, even in combat zones, including V-mail and packages from home. The mail call, impossible for Japanese forces, maintained American morale through a connection to home. Christmas 1944 provided the most profound psychological impact. Japanese prisoners witnessed holiday celebrations that exceeded pre-war Japanese feasts, with menus featuring roast turkey, ham, multiple side dishes, and 3 kinds of pie. Seaman First Class Hiroshi Nakamura wrote in a hidden diary, "The Americans celebrated their Christmas while we attacked them. Every sailor received presents. They sang songs and played music. They were happy. We were starving and dying for the emperor while our enemies celebrated with abundance." This was when I knew Japan had already lost. The revelation went beyond food to a fundamental worldview. The Yamato spirit, Japan's belief that spiritual strength could overcome material disadvantage, crumbled against American industrial reality. Ensign Teo Yamamoto later wrote, "We were taught Americans were soft, that their abundance made them weak. But I watched them fight fires for 12 hours, then eat ice cream and return to battle. The abundance didn't weaken them, it sustained them. We were the weak ones, pretending spirit could replace food." By the war's end, Japanese prisoners had witnessed impossibilities: ice cream in the tropics, movies at sea, laundries in combat zones, and hospitals afloat. They had tasted hamburgers, milkshakes, and apple pie. They had experienced democracy's abundance, enlisted men eating the same food as officers, all races serving together, and enemies receiving medical care. The return of Japanese prisoners after the surrender spread these revelations throughout Japan. Former POWs became unwitting ambassadors of American abundance. Their testimonies were more powerful than any occupation propaganda. Commander Mitsuo Fukuda, the Pearl Harbor architect, converted to Christianity and became a missionary. A transformation rooted in his capture. The Americans had every reason to hate me. Instead, they gave me medical care, food, and dignity. This abundance of spirit was more powerful than any weapon. Statistical summary from U.S. Naval Records, daily caloric intake, U.S. Navy, 400 IJN, 400, freshwater production, large U.S. carrier 140,000 gallons daily, ice cream production, 500 gallons daily, mail delivery, weekly. The Japanese prisoners returned to a destroyed nation with a revolutionary message. The enemy's strength came not from cruelty but from kindness, not from deprivation but from abundance, not from spirit but from logistics. They had seen the future, and it tasted like chocolate ice cream served at sea during battle. The transformation of Japanese military personnel through exposure to American naval abundance represents one of history's most complete ideological reversals. Warriors who expected to die for the emperor instead lived to tell of American ice cream machines. Sailors trained for spiritual warfare discovered that material abundance sustained rather than corrupted the fighting spirit. In the end, the ice cream machines on American carriers achieved what bombs could not: the complete destruction of Japanese militarist mythology. These revelations transformed the Japanese understanding of American power and their own defeat. They returned to Japan not as defeated warriors but as witnesses to an abundance beyond imagination, carrying truths that would reshape their nation from a militarist empire to a democratic ally. The story reminds us that sometimes the greatest victories are won not through destruction but through demonstration.